podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our quick publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello and welcome to your post-match Raw, podcasting to you from my field here in beautiful rural Ireland. I'm Trev Downey, and joining me to give their immediate reactions to AC Milan 1, Liverpool 3 in the Champions League from the San Siro are Dave Hendrick and Karl Matchett. And Dave, I will take one of those outings every night of the week and twice on a Saturday. It just felt, I believe that we gave them an absolute pasting. The stats don't necessarily back that up when you look at the raw stats, but it really felt like we were just superior to them in almost every way, and the only thing that was going to make a balls of us once we got our foot into the game was our own sloppiness. It was night and day at times between that and what we saw at Forest. I have to say it's very heartening, and considering the start that we made to the game, very, very heartening to see a turnaround like that. And like I say, only our own sort of almost laziness and sloppiness was what invited them in a couple of times, I thought. Would you agree, or is that...
No, 100% I'd agree. No, I think we weren't great, but we were good. And as long as we're good, we have enough to beat most teams in the Champions League. Like, there's none of our players that will walk off that pitch thinking that they've played at their absolute apex, but I think pretty much everybody had a good game. Like at the weekend, I thought the entirety of the midfield and attack ranged from somewhere between crap and absolutely should never play again. And tonight, I thought they all ranged from good to very good, bar Diogo Jota, who I did think was probably the only Liverpool player who didn't really play well. Just thought he looked a little bit off, a little bit out of it, and fluffed his lines a couple of times. But he still did work hard and he still offered himself for the team. So all in all, yeah, we go behind early. It's just a breakdown in the pressing system. It's some rash decisions by Costas and by Virgil, to be fair. And then not enough pace to recover and get back in from the whole team. But then from there, we go behind, and I think it's quite a controlled performance. Like, it wasn't like we were seeing last season where we go behind and all of a sudden we're launching the kitchen sink. It was very composed, very managed, very professional. And I thought we grew into the game, particularly the midfield three. I thought early they looked a little bit outmatched physically because their midfield was just bigger and seemed stronger than ours. But then once ours settled in, I thought they really started to play well. And I thought Gravenberch really grew into the game, and by the second half was playing well. I thought Alexis the same. And Szoboszlai, he had a bit of a love-hate relationship with the ball tonight, where...
Thank you, because I was listening to Alan Shearer talking about how he's man of the match and head and shoulders above everything, but he did make an awful lot of balls ups for all his excellence.
He did. Like, off ball, I thought he was absolutely outrageously good. Like, I thought he was an absolute animal off the ball tonight. But on the ball, it was almost like he was trying to prove a point, and he was trying to play a little bit too quickly and trying to move things, quicker than they needed to be moved. And he was trying to ping balls into areas, or he was firing balls at players. And even the passes he was completing, at times he was putting some of our lads under a lot of pressure. Like, he played a 1-2 with Gravenberch at one point, and it was like he was angry with Gravenberch, the way he fired the ball back in at him. And you're just like, you're much better than this. You're much more technically sound than this. So just settle down on it. And he did, to be fair, as the game went on. And I thought he really did shine in the second half for a lot of his off-ball work and his ability to just keep play moving and then get in the box himself, and obviously gets rewarded with his goal. I think Shearer was maybe a little bit aggressive with the man of the match shout, but then I'm not sure who you'd pick, because I think across the board it was a very even level from Liverpool. I'm not sure there was a standout that you'd say, well, he was definitely man of the match. You could tell me it was any one of 3 or 4 players, and I'd just nod my head and say, yeah, I think fair enough.
Yeah, probably a clatter of 7 out of 10s for us tonight. It'd be fair to say. And Karl, like, to bring you in as early as possible here, you know, it's. I've just looked at the table. God love me, here, just for the crack, and you're reminded of the weirdness that is this new setup. But I found it, and again, just to echo the point, quite heartening that we can go to a place like the San Siro in Slot's first out game in charge of this outfit, and just rescue a scenario that we looked to have ballsed up so early in a way that felt very controlled, like the best of the performances, the second halves of the first 2 games and most of the United game has felt that kind of sort of sense of control was there, that confidence that there was a gear to step up. It is encouraging.
Yeah, for sure. I think that there was plenty of positives to take, even aside from the fact that we were responding to losing at the weekend, for example, like even going behind in the first couple of minutes. I think our actual approach play before that first goal went in was quite positive, to be perfectly honest. Like, it's easy to forget now because like we conceded at the end of it and we were behind for a little bit, but actually we started the game kind of on the front foot, and it looked like it wasn't going to be a thing where that defeat got into the players' heads, or they were worried about it, or it was, became a thing where we were going to stutter in sort of performance levels and all the rest of it. So I think most of it was really, really positive tonight. I think there was a couple of very good performances. I kind of agree with what you and Dave have said about mostly 7s and decents and goods and all the rest of it. But I think there were a couple of maybe not absolute standouts in general performance levels across the season, but just individually what a few players did, like Cody Gakpo, for example, coming in for his first start of the season, for example. I think he was really, really positive. I think he did as much as he could to make a very positive impression. That kind of thing was like a big, big takeaway from tonight, I think. There'd been obviously lots of talk about should there be changes and will there be changes around the rotations and all the rest of it. So I think what did happen transpired really, really well for Arne Slot. Happy birthday to him, of course. And also, I don't know if you want to talk about like the wider context of this Champions League group that you just said you looked at the table. I mean, it kind of feels to me we're one game in and like jeopardy is already out the window as far as this competition's concerned. Like the projections suggest that 10, maybe 11 points and you're guaranteed a playoff spot. Like we've got 3 already. We've got 7 games left. It kind of feels a little bit like, well, that's that done now. We've still got 4 home games to play, and now like a couple of them are against decent opposition. But like, really, are we going to stumble that much against Sturm Graz and the rest of it? So I don't want to sort of get ahead of ourselves and all the rest of it. But yeah, it kind of feels a little bit like this one away win, and we can take it relatively sanely, quite comfortably, and just kind of embrace the games. Not really worry too much about the pressure of going through.
Well, that is in and of itself a wonderful thing to think about, actually. I'm glad you kind of put it in that context. You've given us an in there to talk about the selection tonight with Gakpo coming in, as you mentioned. And really, I think that final goal is pretty much Cody's goal, with the work that he did in the build-up. But he was, again, another impressive addition. The changes from the weekend were himself and Tsimikas. Were you surprised by those? I think an awful lot of people might say that Diaz could count himself unlucky if he was out in terms of form after the weekend, but it's probably far more complex than that, and to do with managing minutes. Did you feel that was an interesting selection? We'll talk later on about Tsimikas in terms of his overall contribution as we go through the bits and pieces in the match. Some just genuinely awful stuff from him, and then some absolutely sound stuff, like fine, from him as well. But overall, like, I mean, to go into this game, we've got, is it 5 different lads who've played 5 90s in a row now? Were you expecting more change?
I wasn't really. I think ahead of the game, when we were speaking on scouts, I said like one change in each line, like one in defence, one in midfield, one in attack, wouldn't be outrageous. Like, there would just be kind of normal, level-headed kind of, not rotation for the sake of it, but keeping things fresh, giving people opportunities, that kind of thing. And Dave made the point that you kind of got to pick which ones you're going to do it from. Would we do it for tonight, or would we do it for the Bournemouth match, or would we look for sort of 2 games in a row around the League Cup, something like that? So I actually picked Jota as my one from the forward line to come out rather than Diaz, just on the basis that I just think over the last couple of games he has been a little bit off it, and I think, you know, Dave's already referenced that tonight. It was kind of the same again. I think he's just a little bit below the level of what some of the others have produced. So that was the only reason that I picked Jota, really. But yeah, Cody, I think he's had more or less one full game in minutes from his 4 sub appearances. So coming on and playing the bulk of this match is obviously a big step forward, a positive. And you know, we're going to need these players. I mean, you're going to need them eventually to come in and play different roles. It was good to see him back on the left today as well, rather than last season was obviously almost exclusively through the centre. And I think, again, we saw not just that he can contribute, but maybe that this is probably the best role he can contribute most of all from.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It was just kind of inspiring to see him do that thing where we know he has the ability to drive in and beat a man and get a shot away. It's very, very encouraging. The bench tonight, for the record, for Liverpool is obviously big, it being the Champions League. You've got Yaros on there along with Kelleher. Joe Gomez, who came on and looked a bit like a Make-A-Wish Foundation candidate. Endo, who came on and looked even more like a Make-A-Wish Foundation candidate, falling over, and Jesus Christ, it's almost as if he was wearing Arne Slot's disapproval or distrust on his head. Diaz, Nunes, Chiesa. That's an interesting trio. Jones, Robertson, Kwanzaa, Morton and Bradley. The Milan side, Dave, has a lot of interesting players that a lot of people, even if they don't know much about Serie A or AC Milan specifically, will be familiar with, mostly because half of them played with Chelsea at some point or other. They went tonight with Mike Maignan, who spent, nearly 8-9 minutes on his hoop for the entirety of the match. Remarkable stuff, really. I we'll talk about that as we get to it. I think it had a lot to do with Espen Eskas being a little bit maybe inexperienced as a referee. Calabria, their captain, Tomori, Pavlovic, Hernandez, Fofana, Reinders, Loftus-Cheek, Pulisic, Morata and Rafael Leao. Lots of very, very good footballers in that 11. And on their bench, it's not looking quite as strong when, you know, you're bringing on the likes of Emerson Royale, I guess. And, you know, they had to bring on Torriani for the aforementioned Maignan, who went off eventually injured. Tammy Abraham's on there, another person people might recognise the name from the Premier League as well. What do you make of them under Fonseca? There's been sort of talks that it all is not particularly well. I think they got their first win of the week of the season at the weekend.
I don't need a VPN. I've got nothing to hide. Ha. This is what I used to tell myself before I hooked up with LibertyShield.com. Not only is my home internet now fully encrypted, but I can now access all the websites I want, whenever I want, and do so from absolutely anywhere. As a Liverpool fan, I love to know I can now watch every match, regardless of whether it's on UK TV or not. My Liberty Shield VPN makes sure nothing is blocked and guarantees me super fast streaming speed throughout that match. You can get connected right now with their software package, which includes a 48-hour no-obligation free trial and instant access to their apps for Apple, Android, Fire TV, PC, Mac and Android TV. Or go a step further like I have and get one of their pre-configured VPN routers. These small but powerful devices allow you to easily connect every device in your home to VPN, making it the perfect solution for smart TVs, Mac boxes and games consoles. Visit LibertyShield.com today and use coupon code AIVPN25 to get 25% off at checkout.
Yeah, things aren't apparently all that wholesome and happy at AC Milan at the moment. I think at the final whistle we saw a sight of Zlatan Ibrahimovic turning and marching up the steps, and he made some weird comments before the game about how he's the man in charge, and there's other people at the club who apparently are not at all enthused by Zlatan's behaviour. I think he's got too much influence. So the players seem split between who they're taking their orders from. I thought it was all a little bit weird at the end, where all the players were kind of standing around and a couple of them looked like they were about to start crying, as if they'd lost like a really important match, and not just match 1 of 8 in the Champions League. Like, it almost was, when you see a team that have gotten either relegated or they've missed out on promotion or something, and they're kind of standing around and they're looking at the stands, and that's kind of how they looked, which was all just a little bit weird. Like, it was a bit too much. But then people were saying the commenting, John Champion said that in a recent game there was a water break and Fonseca was trying to get the players over to him, and some of them just wouldn't come over. They were kind of standing off doing their own thing. So, no, it doesn't sound great. But like when you go through the team, like, there is a lot of good players there. Magnon's one of the best keepers in the world. Hernandez, one of the best left backs you'll find. I like both Tomori and Pavlovic. I'm not sure I like them as a pairing. I think Malik Thiaw, when he comes back, is a better partner for both of them. I don't like Calabria. I'm not really sure how he's carved out a career at AC Milan. He's the type of fella you'd normally see as like the backup right back for Brentford or somebody.
It's mad, isn't he? He's a real just like cart horse of the lad.
Yeah. I assume he has kissed the right rings in whichever way you want to take that. The midfield, I mean, Fofana, Loftus-Cheek and Reinders, they're all decent. I'm not sure any of them are very good, but they're all decent. Like, they're solid players. And then, like, the two wingers are super talented, Pulisic and Leao, but they're also very frustrating. Like, Pulisic scores after 3 minutes and then doesn't really do anything after that. Leao had a couple of good runs, one of which ended with Ibu Kanate just taking his lunch money. But like, that shows the talent he has. He just doesn't produce it regularly enough. And I mean, Morata's most significant involvement in the game was picking himself up off the floor after Virgil had just battered him a couple of times. So, but he is a player that's had a phenomenal career. Like, you have to give him his due. He's played for a lot of big clubs. He's won a lot of big honours. He was captain of Spain at the Euros. He's clearly a good player. He's not as good as a player to have that career should be, but, a lot of managers like him because he grafts. I think he's a little bit like a Dirk Kuyt type for a lot of managers. You're going to get 10 to 14 goals out of him, and he'll graft and he'll work and he'll lead the line and things like that. So I get it, but I mean, this is AC Milan we're talking about. Like, we grew up, the three of us, idolising this team. That team in the late 80s under Sacchi, the team in the 90s under Capello. Then there was the great team in the 2000s under Carlo. Like, for a long, long time, they were sort of the team. They were what Barcelona became with Guardiola and co. They were what Madrid sort of re-became in the 2010s and onwards. That team that just sort of dominates and constantly in European Cup finals. They were in 8 European Cup finals between 89 and 07, and they won 5 of them. And the 3 they lost, 2 of them they probably should have won. Now, they should have lost in 07 to us, but they should have beaten us in 05. Like, this is a club that for so long was so dominant in Europe, and now you're looking at them and you're thinking, like, Davide Calabria is their captain. This is a club that was captained by Baresi and then Maldini for 25 years. Those 2 were captain, and now this fella who's not good enough to play for them. And then you've got like a weird ownership situation. You've got this weird thing with Zlatan, who's technically an advisor, but thinks he's running the place. And then you've got Fonseca, who I'm not sure is very good, and he's the manager. It's all a bit strange. And I'm just glad that we got out of there with the win, because it was a tricky enough place to go to start off with. But like Karl said, like the projection system suggests sort of 10 to 11 for a playoff spot. Obviously, we want to get into the top 8 so that we can skip all of that nonsense. But, this was probably our toughest away game. I know we go to Leipzig, which won't be easy, but at the same time, it feels like this is a really good start for us. We get Bologna home next, beat them, that's 6 points on the board. Then we go to Leipzig, beat them, that's 9 points on the board. And then you're basically safe at that point. You're needing one more win. We've got Leverkusen and Real at home, but the rest of our games after that are all fairly straightforward games that you'd expect us to win and win comfortably. So I think it was important to get the 3 points today and get ourselves moving.
Al, can I ask you something? Because before you joined us, when you were walking up your massive stairs with your cup of tea, myself and Dave and Guy were chatting about the Amazon Prime coverage, and we were, being comparatively, I think, positive about it. The commentary team were fine, and bits and pieces like that. The people they had in the studio were quite good. At least some of them were. But I have to ask you about this on the back of, the sort of usual ref watch spot here. I mentioned Espinescas today already once on the show. We were told he's young. We were told he's relatively inexperienced. Certainly he was new to me, a Norwegian guy. But the real feature of the Prime coverage for me, which warrants some sort of mention in a negative sense, was they have Mark frickin' Clattenburg as their go-to for, let's bring Mark in here for, anytime a decision is vaguely controversial. Clattenburg went ahead, and I don't know if you had this coverage. First of all, did you have this coverage yourself, Karl?
I did, and I'm pretty sure I know what you're going to be talking about as well. Yeah,
I just want to run this past you because it's such a mental concept. He was talking about how the crowd was getting very angsty and upset, and how it was very important that the referee intervened and gave a couple of decisions to calm them down. And I thought, well, now, if that isn't one of the finest insights into the refereeing mentality I've ever heard, I was simultaneously horrified and fascinated. A remarkable kind of a thing to say, I thought.
An absolute nonsense. So just to clarify for anyone who wasn't following that commentary or whatever, he basically said that it was after, I think, Leao had gone down and a free kick hadn't been given, and then Gakpo went up the other end and went down and a free kick wasn't given. He said that the crowd was obviously getting against the referee, and he had to give one or two little fouls or easy fouls, I forget what he said, Milan's way, basically, to get the crowd back on side. Now,
I have to calm the players down as well.
What?
What? Yeah.
Like, you, as the referee, manage the game by doing the game, not being swayed by the crowd. You give a foul, little one or easy one or big one, when it's a foul. Not just to calm people down. This whole referee, I don't want to get into referees on this podcast, but referees this week and PGMOL and all the rest of it have absolutely been hammered this week, and rightly so. All those yellow cards in the Chelsea game at the weekend, and the Newcastle one started going all wild as well, in a game that had absolutely no kind of challenge in it whatsoever. And what was it, 14 in the Chelsea game? Because referees or PGMOL now have decided that they need to bring it upon themselves to completely sanitize the game that we're watching, so that there's no kind of talking back, there's no kind of emotion being displayed or anything of the sort. And now we're being told that even the people in the crowd in the stadium need to be refereed as well. All of that can get in the bin, as far as I'm concerned. That was absolutely ridiculous.
It was embarrassing to listen to. And meanwhile, that freed up a sort of prehistoric chit-chat from Shearer and John Champion in the middle of the game about how oh, well, he's given that one to even things up because he has to give it because he just gave that one there. And you're thinking, oh my God, what sort of nonsense are we actually living through? But anyway, I just wanted to mention it and highlight it because it might not come up during the game.
But we should remember who we're talking about here in Mark Clattenburg.
Yes, we should.
That's always been about, let me be the main talking point after this game. Like in Mark Clattenburg's mind, people pay their money to watch Mark Clattenburg. We have subscribed to Amazon Prime or Prime Video, whatever it's called, to hear the thoughts of Mark Clattenburg. We're actually not watching the game. We've all got our eyes closed and we're just waiting for the moments where we hear those words. Let's bring Mark in here. And now we're intrigued. Now we're locked in because now we're getting pearls of wisdom. But honestly, if he's not the only one that I've heard say shit like this in recent weeks. If you want some insight into the referees and how they go about their jobs and stuff, and some really eye-opening stuff, especially for lads of our age who are a bit more of an older vintage, I would suggest there's a podcast called Under the Cosh. Now, I don't recommend podcasts because most of them are shit, but Under the Cosh is quite good. It's a couple of ex-players, John Parkin and Chris Brown, and another fella whose name is also Chris Brown. And they basically have guests on. So they've had 2 former referees on. Kevin Lynch is one. He spent most of his career in the lower leagues, but did referee in the top flight for a while. And they also had on, is it Jeff Winter? Is that his name?
Yeah.
Yeah, they also had him on. And I swear, go listen to those podcasts. Now, you'll have to scroll back to like 2021 or 2022 on their feed for them. But it is remarkable the kind of insight that you'll hear. Like Kevin Lynch says, like if he gave a corner and a player said to him, you've got that wrong, like that's not their corner, that's a goal kick. And he thought to himself, oh, maybe I have got it wrong. As soon as the ball was in the air from the corner, he'd just blow for a free kick out, whether anyone was being touched or not. Because he didn't want any sort of repercussions from a bad decision that he thought he might have made. Like, it's staggering what cowardice you find in this profession.
And this on the back of Mike Dean's revelations last season, was it? I think it was last season, about how they're all in a club and looking out for your mates and what that means for the VAR situation being run by them as well. It's a remarkable state of affairs. Dave, let's begin the game, you and I, and we'll talk about the first sort of 20, 25 minutes, maybe up to half an hour, because there's 2 goals in here. The first thing of note is the fact that we go a goal down. It's Pulisic who scores it. It's really well taken, but we end up with a situation where there's a ball played from the midfield into this gaping space on the left side of our defence with nobody there. Pulisic just drives on, and basically he's got nothing on, I don't think, by way of a ball inside, or not an easy one anyway, and so he takes on the shot, and it's a very, very good one to the right to left into the bottom corner. Great finish. And, you know, obviously there's something to be talked about. You've mentioned it briefly already in terms of who may or may not have been at fault in terms of us being all at sea in terms of our defending there. But just to bring it on another little bit, now I have to say I have nothing else of note that happens between that and 16 minutes. And it's not because there was nothing happening in terms of us being awful. It was just there was nothing really by way of any chance creation until 16 minutes, where we have the first real opportunity for the Reds. Mo is on the end of a great move. He whacks one off the bar with his right foot. The keeper is beaten. If it had just gone a little bit lower, Magnan was sort of falling backwards. There was a gap between the top of his hands and the bar. The ball would have gone in. And we are starting to look a little bit better. Tsimikas follows up with a blast over the top. Probably the best of his shots. He has 2 more later on, which are possibly amongst the worst things I've ever seen. There's a yellow for Calabria on 21 minutes. He's pretty wild in on Cody Gakpo. One of those very gentle and officious referees that Karl was mentioning earlier on could possibly have been considering a red card on a different day, because he was wild and out of control. But we are 1-1 on 23 minutes in the simplest way possible. It's Ibu Kanate head and shoulders above everybody, heading home a Trent spot kick with Milan flailing, not able to get there. He just looked like a man amongst children, not in that home, to be honest. It's a lovely delivery too, as well, from the free kick after the foul on Cody that I mentioned, where Calabria got the yellow card. And, you know, we do actually just go on a bit of a tear after that. 26 minutes, a really appalling miss by Jota. Great carry into the box by McAllister. He's got Cody inside him, but somehow Jota puts it wide of the near post. It's bad. There's a snapshot by Mo on 27, and on 29, a great run and shot by Cody Gakpo, parried as far as Mo Salah. He takes a touch and smashes a left footer off the bar, roughly in the same position as he did with the right foot. And it bounces down, hits Maignan foot, could easily have bounced into the goal. And we go from a situation where we were sort of scratching our heads going, what the hell is going on, to slowly building our way back into the game. Like I say, nothing really happened for about 10 or 12 or 15 minutes. And then all of a sudden, boom, here we are. That's Liverpool football. Great pressure, hit the bar twice, get a goal. The game could have been put to bed on the half-hour mark.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, like you said, they get the goal, and the next 12, 14 minutes are basically just us trying to calm ourselves down, trying to take the sting out of the atmosphere, trying to kill the mood in the crowd, because when that goal goes in, the crowd goes fairly amplified. And we've all seen it many, many times, that when a team gets that goal and the crowd really gets behind them, they get energized, they start looking for that second goal. They want that killer one. And we just didn't give Milan any sort of opportunity to do that. And whereas, as I said earlier, whereas last year under Klopp and previous years under Klopp, when we go the goal behind, we would often try and roar back straight away and try and score immediately. And last season in particular, it was kitchen sink time. We concede, the next thing Trent is playing 50-yard passes. Whereas this was so much more controlled, and it was clearly aimed at just settling everybody down. Like, forget that's happened. The game is still 0-0. Let's just start the game over. We've got the whole game to go. They've scored within 3 minutes, which means there's still over 90 minutes to go. And you factor in a stoppage time. So let's just start over. And I thought we managed it really, really well. And like you said, I mean, the game not could have been over, probably should have been over. Like the first one with Mo that hits the bar, I think fair enough. Like, it's on his right foot, he's moving at speed, he's changing direction. It's a tough enough one, and like, he gives Maignan no chance. Ibu scores. It's a gorgeous little lofted, like, golf shot almost from Trent. Just lifts the ball. Might as well have walked over and just planted it on his head. It was that perfect. And as you said, Ibu's just... And I was delighted Sturridge highlighted that at half-time, because it felt like Seedorf and Lampard were trying to blame the defenders and not giving credit to Ibu. And Sturridge was like, look at the athleticism. Look how high he gets up above everybody. Like, you've got to credit the goal scorer there as well. And then, as you said, like, Jota, like, Jesus Christ. It's a simple ball to Cody, and he's tapping into an empty net. But if you're going to take it on yourself, you've got to at least work the keeper. And it's one of the worst finishes you'll ever see. Like, for a guy who's so two-footed and finishes well off both feet, it was a complete scuff, and it dribbles wide. I don't even think it hit the net. I think it actually missed the entirety of the back of the net as well and just dribbled wide. It was that bad. And then, like you said, Mo has the second one where he hits the bar. And arguably, I think that time he maybe should have done a bit better. I don't think he realised that he had quite as much time. So he just sort of turns and hits it. I think he could have turned and placed it, especially given Maignan was struggling. Like, he clearly wasn't up to it. He clearly gotten a knock or a bang or whatever. And I think if Mo had taken his time and just been a little bit more composed, he probably scores. And then we're 3-1 up, and that's obviously before we score our second goal, and that would have been game over. But at the end of the day, the most important thing was that we established ourselves in the game, we'd gotten our goal, and then we continued to show a dominant level, and we didn't give them a sniff of going down the other end and scoring and trying to get back in the lead, which I think is vital for us.
Hey guys, it's Eddie Gibbs from Anfield Index here. I hope you're enjoying this podcast, and I'm sorry to call time on the show before it ends. In the current climate, it's tougher than ever before to offer podcasts for free. At Anfield Index, we produce over 75 free shows every month, which I'm confident is unparalleled in the LFC sphere. Whilst we'd love to offer everything for free, the production costs now make this impossible. That said, we don't want to follow the model of other channels and lock all of our content behind a paywall. So what we've decided to do is to continue offering every show for free, but cut that offering to 30 minutes on our longer shows. So to get all of our shows in full and enjoy the best of everything we have to offer, we really hope you'll consider supporting the channel and signing up at AnfieldIndexPro.com. For about the price of 1 cup of coffee, you'll get every podcast in full with 0 ads. You'll also get access to our LFC VIP community, where you can enjoy live podcasts, engage with our podcasters, and chat with other Reds in real time. So that website again, AnfieldIndexPro.com. Join today.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.